Hello and welcome to another episode of Inspired Women Gathering Show. This is a show that talks about all things from life, relationships, spirituality, business, and everything in between. Women are so inspiring, living through their stories, finding resilience, resourcefulness, tenacity, and the powerful impact that we make in the world. I love connecting and having deep conversations, sharing with you the women I am inspired by and so blessed to know. My name is Dixie Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm a soulful women and wealth coach and healer, helping heart-centered entrepreneurial women heal their self-worth, embody their soul purpose, and create sustainable business with heart. And I created this platform to highlight amazing women who I come across and connect with. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. And I'm so excited for our guest today. Her name is Teddi Cutler, and our topic is about thriving through chronic illness. Teddi was born and raised by a single mom in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with a bachelor's degree in nursing. She focused primarily on mental health and newborn care. After having her daughter, she founded a private nursing practice geared towards nutritional education so that she could work from home as much as possible. She at one point owned 15 revenue estate properties. She later went through a divorce and switched career paths to elementary education. Only 2 weeks before her second marriage, she was unexpectedly misdiagnosed with brain tumors. Only 1 year later, she underwent a heart surgery and is now being worked up by a specialist for a very rare disease called Vascular Ehler's Danlos syndrome. Despite her chronic illness, Teddi is thriving. She is a self-published author, a podcaster for Talk with Teddi, and hosts women's workshops geared towards helping others gain a better sense of self-awareness and self-love and self-expression through a variety of healing modalities and tools. So, wow, Teddi, thank you so much for being here. You've had quite a journey this far.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor and a great opportunity to just chat. I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. So you've been through so much, and I'd love for you just to share. Let's just go right to the topic.
Absolutely.
To share with you a little bit about your journey of how you came to be to this point in your journey. I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, so where to start? Where to start? I have quite the medical background, not even talking about my nursing degree, just talking about my own health history. So I'd been through a divorce and I was trying to get by as a single mom, registered nurse, and I just started getting these awful migraines, like debilitating, like can't get out of bed, have to stay in bed with an ice pack on my forehead, one on my neck, and like stay in the dark room. And I was engaged at the time, preparing a wedding. Maybe stress was a factor, who knows? It's probably a good stress, but I was getting these awful migraines. I had been into the emergency room 3 times already. And I think it was the third or fourth time around, I woke up in the middle of the night. My heart started going like crazy high from just sleeping. It made no sense and my head was just killing me. So I actually called the ambulance on myself. I was alone with my daughter. I said, Mom, you got to come and watch my daughter. I rushed they took me into the Rocky View, which is in South Calgary. And they were just planning on treating me for a regular headache. Or a migraine protocol, which I had done 3 times already in the past couple of weeks. And I advocated for myself. I said, guys, there's something wrong. Like, you need to scan me. This isn't just a regular migraine. This is like, look on my file. You'll see this keeps happening. So the neurologist on call said, fine, just give her a CT scan, make this crazy lady happy. So he did, and the scan revealed probably the size of my fist. I had a huge mass in my brain, and then 3 other little ones. And so by that time, I had called my fiance Michael at the time, and he came. So here's this poor doctor, like, saying he's never seen anything this big in his history. He's prepping the foothills to do brain surgery on me. He's telling us, prep yourselves. She probably has brain cancer. This is what the life expectancy is like. Michael, you better start calling her family members. So it was insane, Dixie. So I gave Michael an out. I said, you didn't sign up for this. I know we're planning a wedding, but you didn't sign up for being with somebody that has this going on. Like, who knew it would be this bad? So they ran a few more tests, which gave them a little bit more information, and they did an MRI, which shows a little bit more of the borders of this mass and just gives them more information about what it's all about.
Mhm.
So it was a long 4 hours of waiting for the results. Like surprisingly, I almost saw it as a bit of an epiphany, and it was in those 4 hours that I decided I got to write a book. Like I have to leave a legacy behind. I have a daughter. What is life really all about? And I really feel that that moment has really created a pivot in my own life to kind of search for the better and know that we're really made for more.
Mhm.
So the MRI results come back, and it was actually there's something called developmental venous anomalies or cavernomas. So I have this huge, massive, it's basically like a big cluster of blood vessels that shouldn't be there. So I go and get regular MRIs done to make sure they're not growing. And one of them puts me at a greater risk for a brain bleed. So I'm on like an anti-seizure medication, and I have to be a little more careful. I do snowboard for fun, but I have to be more careful. I'm confident enough in my snowboarding abilities. I go when it's not busy, so I have to keep living life, but I do have to be a little more careful. So luckily Michael stuck by my side, and he's been my rock and my awesome support system. He's such a good example to me, and that's kind of where it all started. Then we got married, and about a year later, I was in Penticton with his family. We always go down for Peach Fest because he was born and raised in Penticton, and then moved to Calgary later on to go to university and stuff. And I woke up one morning, kind of like the morning that the emergency room came in, or the ambulance came and got me, and my heart was going crazy, but this time it did not slow itself down. Like it was up at probably 160, 170. Michael had an Apple Watch at the time and I didn't, so I put the watch on. I was kind of monitoring it on my way to the hospital, and they kept me there for a few hours. And they were like, yeah, something's not right. I don't think this is caused by your brain abnormalities.
Mhm.
So they kind of connected with Alberta Health Services because I was in BC at the time, and they got me set up with the Holter monitor for 48 or 24 hours. I think it was 24 hours. And yeah, so I had this Holter monitor strapped to me. I remember I'm a very open person. I posted pictures on social media, and I was like this with this Holter monitor all strapped to me. And I tried to do everything I could think of that would trigger this weird heart episode thing that I had happen ever since my daughter was born. And at this point, she was probably, maybe 6 or 7 years old. So it had been happening for a while, and I was kind of just brushing off the heart stuff. Like the head stuff was painful. The heart stuff, I was short of breath, and I felt like I was having a heart attack every once in a while, but that's okay. No big deal, right? So this heart monitor luckily caught a few episodes, and they were able to diagnose me with supraventricular tachycardia, heart arrhythmia. So a year after we got married, I underwent a heart ablation surgery to cauterize the electro circuit that was kind of misfiring in my heart. So far so good with that. And then as of lately, I've already written my first book, published my first book, thinking things are going to be fine now that I've had my heart surgery. And then a few years later, life goes on. I switched my career into education, a little less physically intense and mentally intense, if I'm
Is
being
it though?
honest.
I don't know.
It's a different kind of stress, right? It's like working with neonatal intensive care babies, like you're dealing with little lives, and if you mess up, it's a life. Where at least with education, it's still lives, but their lives aren't on the line. They're not like, yeah, I'd rather deal with a temper tantrum from a kindergarten kid than a crashing baby and having to do CPR on a baby. It's just a different kind of stress.
I didn't mean it that way, but I just meant still dealing with kids and more kids all at one time. I mean, just different stressors, right? But before I want to go back just a little bit because there's so much that you just shared. Thank you so much for that. And I'm curious. I would love to know. Like you have such an optimistic personality. And I would say ever since I've known you, that's always been something that gravitated. Like you radiate, and I've seen you go through your surgeries and you still are like, I'm here, I'm smiling, we're getting through it. What would you say is your biggest, helps you get through all of those times?
Um, I'm a pretty religious person. I have a really strong relationship with my Heavenly Father or God or higher power. And I think I've always had the mindset that things happen for you, not to you. So I've never really clung on to the victim mentality or anything like that because that doesn't serve me. So I've just always kind of said, okay, well, this sucks. Yeah, I have hard days. Like right now, I'm still being diagnosed with a couple other chronic illnesses, which we can or can't go into. It doesn't matter to me. But some
Mhm.
days I'm flat out and I'm hanging out in bed and I'm doing my Zoom calls from my bed, and that's just the way it is. That's how my family knows it is. But you know what? There's always something to be grateful for, and I'm huge on my gratitude practice daily. And just knowing that I'm supposed to learn something from all of this, and I'm supposed to be more or become more or be a part of something bigger than myself.
I love that, being something bigger than yourself. Have you always known that? Was that something, because you're very accomplished even to this point in your stages of life. When you think back to childhood, what did you want to be when you were younger?
It's funny because I've done one of those personality tests and it says that I'm an achiever. And I think it's
I love
always been
yours.
personality, right? Like I think it's the Enneagram one. I've done a lot of different, I'm
Okay.
fascinated with personalities and things like,
Yeah.
and like tendencies and things that we're born with. So I'm definitely of that personality type that I like must like make something for myself and I must achieve something. And even on my bad days, I know I'll tell my friends like, oh, I'm going to do some women's workshops, or like, Teddy, you're on a medical leave right now. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like much of a like relaxing, like stress-free thing to do, but that's just kind of, it's an innate thing that's in me. And I can't even tell you why. It's just kind of always been there.
Mm-hmm. So does it come from a place to achieve something, or is it more to serve? Does it come from serving others?
Absolutely, from serving others. I know in my first book and even in my second book, that's kind of the overlying theme to my life is as long as I can help somebody else, even if it's one person, make their life a little bit better, then it's all worth it for me. That's why I started my own podcast, Talk with Teddy. That's why I wrote my book. That's why I'm doing women's conferences. I just want to be able to inspire other people and uplift other people. That's how I use my social media accounts as well. There's so much joy in that. And I know one of my church's leaders, Gordon B. Hinckley, his wife passed away and he was like in his 90s, but he's like leading the entire church. And I remember his wife passed away. And there's a quote going around that basically what he did was he put on his shoes and he went to work. And that was his mentality. So that really stuck hard with me. I think that happened in my teenage years, and he was like a big main figure in my life that was influential to me. So I kind of have learned and tried to emulate that as much as possible. Yeah, life sucks, but when you look outside yourself and try to help other people, then your own worries kind of just melt away and you don't have to worry about it for that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always go back to, I think it's the biggest thing, and I challenge myself in it too when I get lost, is always come back to how can I be of service? How can I be of service right now? How can I be of service to others? And it doesn't always have to be from the place of I'm doing my business to serve others. It's just from who can I serve today and how can I serve them?
Well, and you're such a great example of that, Dixie. Like you've got a Facebook group where you're inspiring me on the daily basis, and I see how many other women's lives you're touching, and in your own business, like you're a healer, and yeah, you're just a really good inspiration as far as helping other people goes as well.
Thank you. I think that's always been something in my nature. Like I've always been that from ever since I was little. And I've always been kind of optimistic in the Enneagram. I'm an 8, so I'm a natural born leader. And even though I don't want to be a lot of the times, and it's just like pick someone else. Why can't someone else take that role?
Because you're just so good at it. You're the natural.
Apparently, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I think just like when I look at you and I look at your energy, like I've always just seen the light that you emanate. And we haven't known each other personally for a long time, but we met years and years ago, and you've always been on my radar. Like I've always been watching, and I see you pop in and out, and I've kind of always had an idea of what's been going on with you. And so I've been not actively participating, but consciously participating, if that makes sense.
Well,
So
I
I've,
appreciate you saying that because there was a point in life where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna lay it all out there and be vulnerable and be honest and open and let people see the real deal of what's really going on. And half the time that's like, guys, I'm waking up with a migraine and this sucks. This is the oil that I'm using or whatever it is.
Mhm,
So I'm glad that you've been watching. Like I always do wonder, is this really making a difference for people? Are people actually noticing?
mhm.
So it's good to hear.
I think well, and that's a reminder because I need that too. Sometimes we're putting stuff out there and we don't even know who's watching. And social media, it's not about, I mean, the idea is to be more social, right? And hopefully we get more interaction and conversation going. But there's so many people who are watching from the sidelines that we don't even realize that we're impacting. And I get reminded of that too, in many different facets where I've done lots of different things from corporate, to being in my business now and serving on other boards and in other leadership experiences. And you just never know who that one person or those five people who are watching from the back of the room, or on social media who are following you silently and not always like, and I try to, I do try to comment or I try to, but you just get busy and you can't do everything. But that is one of the biggest things that I've always admired about you. Like I just see your light, and even after surgeries, I've watched you bounce back. So, I mean, it appears quickly, but I know it's not always as fast as it appears to others. And we do have those terrible days. We have the good days, we have the bad days, and I can relate on different levels because I was a chronic pain sufferer and I suffered in silence because it was just pain that wouldn't go away and I couldn't find resolution for it. And I have found alternative therapies and I love essential oils as well. And I think, it's not always about just showcasing the happy aspects, it's showcasing the tools that you're using in this moment right now.
Absolutely. And I know that connection piece has always been big for me too. So it was hard when I wasn't able to go to work and wasn't able to go to church or hang out with my friends on a monthly basis like I was used to doing. So I kind of spun it like, how can I still stay connected with people? So Facebook and social media has kind of been my platform. Yes, the podcast helps stay connected, but at least through social media, I can kind of communicate with other people and to keep that connection that I was so desperately craving in my life when my life kind of was confined to my bedroom.
Hmm. Well, and I love that too. I think it's so inspiring how you created your business online from your bed. And I think it takes a lot of courage just to show up so vulnerable in that way that I can't get out of bed today but I'm not gonna not be of service to the capacity that I can be. And as long as you're not burning yourself out, right? Like just checking in on that. But I do know, and you and I've had this conversation too, where I know some other people who suffer from other illnesses, graphic designers, like creative people who really suffer, and I've hired some of them as well, and it's been interesting where yes, they're like, Dixie, I'm having a really terrible day and we're going to be working from bed today. I'm like, well, we can reschedule. They're like, nope, I'm here, I'm in bed, I've got my laptop, I've got everything I need. I'm like, okay, as long as you feel good about it. And I think, we're in such a beautiful time and space where we get to co-create together, and there's really no boundary that limits us from that creativity and from being successful and profitable.
Well, and I love to hear that you're working with people that are dealing with things like that, because I think one thing people that don't suffer from chronic illnesses or chronic pain is that we want to feel like we're useful. We feel super guilty when we have our days when we're stuck in bed. I actually started a completely free private Facebook group called, oh, what did I name it? Basically, it's like the social support group for silent sufferers, like something fun. I love alliterations. So if you know of anybody that's silently suffering, it's kind of, we get together on Zoom on a monthly basis and we talk about a little bit about our goals, how our month went, the good, the bad, the ugly, and kind of what we're looking forward to doing. And it's an accountability group, but it's another one of that piece of connection that we're all wanting, because it's hard when you feel like you can't do anything. And I've been lucky that my family is so supportive. Like my husband went out and bought me a new laptop when I said I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to start a podcast. He supports me and he buys me things like laptops or earbuds or whatever it is to help me with these little endeavors, because he's seeing that that's how I'm fulfilling my creative bucket and feeling like I'm useful in the world.
Wow, what a beautiful gifts. Well, great gifts of creativity and then the gifts that just keep on giving. I'm a very functional gift.
I'm so
I love purposeful gifts and quality time. Those are my love languages. Um,
we watch a lot of TV these days because that's all I can handle, and it's the best. That's all I want out of life. I'm pretty easy to please, I guess.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, but I would really love for you, because I love the story of you and your husband and how you met. And I would really love for you to share that, because I think, again, it's despite, like, regardless of what you're going through in life. And I think, again, we have these stigmas that life has to be perfect. We have to have the perfect relationship, the perfect experience, the perfect this and the perfect that. And I love playing in the energy of manifestation. And so I would really love for you to share that story, because I just think it's such a beautiful story, especially the manifestation portion of it, and then just that whole beginning part, because
Yeah,
it's a reminder for me too, being single, and I think when we're ready to call in the one, and just to be so clear in what we're asking for. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about his perspective and what he went through as well. Because I think that just brings so much more hope, in another way, that it doesn't matter what stage, what age, or what experience that you're in. It's never too late. So I'd love for you to share that.
this is awesome. This is one of my favorite stories to share, and this is one of the reasons why I love Halloween so much, because it happened at a Halloween party. So just to back up a bit, I was separated. Now, in my belief system, in my religion, we're not supposed to date until we're officially divorced. And so I was not officially divorced. I was not looking. I think it's so important to start with that. I was not looking to date anybody. I was kind of keeping my head down and trying to handle working with this underlying chronic stuff that I didn't even know about at the time. And I brought my daughter to this Halloween party that we throw. It's like a family friendly, and it's called Trunk or Treat. So the kids all run around the parking lot of the church, and all the adults have the trunks of their cars open. It sounds really creepy when I explain it. We know everybody. It's safe candy.
It's safe. It's okay.
Okay,
Disclaimer.
out of my van. Anyway, so it's this trunk or treat, and then afterwards we all go inside the building and have, like, I had to lead at that time, like a little costume parade with all the kids. And I remember seeing Michael's daughter. I don't remember seeing him because I wasn't looking, right? I wasn't looking at the guys. Like, I was just being a mom and like leading the costume parade.
Right.
I guess that day was October 25th, 2012, maybe, can't remember the year. But he saw me and he asked a couple people, like, tell me about that girl. Like, is she single? Like, there's something about her. And he had been praying. He had been single for 5 years, got out of a pretty rough situation where he was raising his own daughter, Ella, who's now my stepdaughter, kind of alone. And he was dating I think she was a lingerie model or something like that at the time. So like he was doing okay, like living life, whatever. So he had brought his daughter to this same event, and he saw me and he was asking around, and in his own mind he said, that's the one. Like, I know that's the one because I've been praying to know when I see her. And so he didn't even know if I was single or not. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't even talk to me. But that night he called up his girlfriend and broke up with her. He was that certain that we were meant to be together. So that's kind of where it started. And then the next day at church, I still hadn't seen him yet. I was talking to a lady who's a second mom to me. She taught me piano lessons for 12 years of my life, and I think she was actually my mom's labor coach when my mom had me. So she's been in my life for a really long time. So I was kind of just venting and talking with her, and I said, you know, I don't know if I'm ever going to find another guy at my age, like especially if he's been married before. Like, I was bitter, thinking it was always the guy's fault and whatever. I was kind of just feeling stuck and feeling kind of frustrated. And she said, well, Teddy, I actually know, like, I actually work with a guy that he's divorced. He's been divorced for 5 years. He raises his daughter, and I know for a fact that it wasn't his fault why the marriage fell apart. He's a really good guy, and actually that's him walking in right now. And I see just the back of Michael, and he's got a little like tiny mini pink backpack slung over his shoulder, and Ella's trotting behind him. She's probably like 8 or 7 or 8 at the time, because they're 2 years apart. My girl's 2 years younger than Ella. So I was like, so that kind of planted the seed. And she's like a second mom, and I'm always seeking validation from my people that I hold closest to my heart. So that's kind of where it started. And he got going right away and started talking to me, and I kept saying, no, like, we can just be friends for a while. So he'd bring over clothes for Taya, because Ella was 2 years older, even though they were the exact same size. Ella's a tiny 12-year-old, and Taya's an average size 10-year-old now, but they've always been the same size, which is fun. So the rest is kind of history. Like, our girls think that they were friends first. They get along so well. And Michael and I have both been divorced, and we both still deal with their other parents. We call them the others because it's from like the Alien movie, and it's funny. Yeah. And we have a pretty respectful relationship with both sides, and it's a complex dynamic, but it works so well. We're both really musical, and it was meant to be. It was meant to be, and it happened, and Michael knew it before I knew it, and it didn't take me long to figure it out. Okay, this is where my life is taking me next.
That's so beautiful. Did you ever think that you would get married again?
I don't know. Like, I was in survival mode. Like, I left my first husband. I was working independently as a nurse. It was really a hard transition because I was a stay-at-home mom with Taya. So she was 2 at the time, and she was having a rough go of the transition. I had her most of the time at the beginning, and it was hard. It was really hard. So I was literally just treading water and trying to keep my head above water and just surviving. I hadn't even really thought about much. Like, I know my aunt and uncle, who are more like my brother and my sister, because we're so close in age, I was over there one day, and they put me on a bunch of dating sites. And Michael even says to this day he found me on one, and he tried to message me, but I wasn't paying the subscription. Like, I wasn't that committed to these dating sites, so I didn't get the message. Isn't that crazy? So one way or another, he would have found me, but he said that he sent me a message, but I couldn't read them because I didn't have access to message.
Well, that's the energy of star-crossed lovers.
Yes, we were meant to be.
Yeah, you'll find each other.
Yeah, it was very, very neat. And we've been married now for almost 6 years, coming up on 6 years, and better every year. And we've got our dream home that we built together, and we've got a cute little puppy together. We've got some fertility problems with health issues we both have, so we might not be able to have any together, which is a bit of a bummer, but that's okay. I just watch all my friends' little newborn babies because they all know I love newborns so much.
Well, that goes back to your nursing time as well. So tell me a little bit about your first book, and just part of that, going back to the legacy that you felt like you wanted to leave in the world. So what was your awakening, that 4-hour experience while you were waiting for your results to come back? What did you wake up to? Like, what was the message that came through to you?
I think just using my voice. Like, growing up and in my first marriage, both, I could say, were quite controlled by the people that I was with, whether it was my single mom just trying to survive, or my first husband, without being too negative. It was a very situation where they're both very egocentric, and so I never really had a chance to express my own opinions or wants or ideals or
Mhm.
needs or anything like that. I didn't know how to use my own voice. So that was the moment where I'm like, wake up, Teddi. Like, you've been told by your religious leaders and all of your mentors growing up and stuff, like, you need to stand up for what you believe in, and you need to let your light shine. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to write a book. And honestly, my book, I've always been a huge journaler. There's something therapeutic about a pen to paper for me. So my first book is a 2-part book. The first part is literally my journal excerpts from like when I started getting those migraines until about a week or two, no, it was about a year after my marriage. Kind of that whole range of when I was being diagnosed with all these crazy weird things. And I still have been diagnosed with crazy weird things even after my first book. So my first book, it was very, very vulnerable, very open, very honest, very raw. I was
Mhm.
medicated heavily in a lot of it, but I published it anyways.
Right.
It's not perfect writing by any means, but that was what I was going through, and those were my thoughts and my feelings surrounding that time. And my
Mhm.
second part of the book was kind of the journey and the healing modalities that I partook of in order to heal myself, both like mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. There are things that I believed in because they worked for me. So that's my first book. And now I'm
Mhm.
writing another book, and it started when all this pandemic stuff started, when we were all kind of stuck at home. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah. So what's the audience like, who are the people that are drawn to reading your book, the first
I
one?
find it's the same audience that I have listening to my podcast.
Okay.
So it's,
Okay.
I would say, women between the ages of 30 to 45 um,
Mhm.
that want something more, or they're into self-development like I am, or they're into the kind of holistic ways to heal yourself, whether it's essential oils or massage or Reiki or energy work or whatever it may be. Maybe people that are spiritually minded, like myself, like you. That's what I'm finding. It's mostly women, and I never wanted to differentiate between, well, I'm only geared towards women, but that's kind of naturally how
Mhm.
it's worked out. So that's kind of
And I think especially as women, like women who suffer with chronic pain, not to I mean, it's just different. Men suffer differently than women. Like we have different pain thresholds, we have different expressions, different experiences, um, and I know I find a lot of men tend to suffer in silence. Women do too, and I would say that I did as well, but I was always seeking. Like I was always seeking and looking for, okay, well that didn't work. What else can I try? What else can I try? What else can I try? And I think a big part of it too was also my path to personal development. Um, where I was just seeking for answers, and there I think there's just a big part of my soul that was seeking for answers. Seeking for answers, seeking for information. I used to go to all kinds of alternative therapy or like trade shows and this and stuff that were before they were even a real thing, and I did a lot of it on my own. I did a lot of it by myself because I just wasn't getting the answers that I needed from anyone else. And I also lived alone at the time too, and I work myself silly all week, and I'd literally recoup all weekend. And or even at night, like I just fight through it, and then there was times where and then I would just crash, and sometimes I just tried to push it down and ignore it, but it was really a secret that I didn't really share with a lot of people. Because that's the suffering in silence, because it's not something tangible. It's not on the outside. You can't see it. And I couldn't even describe it. And I know for me, a lot of my chronic pain was more emotional. It was definitely a lot of stuffed emotions, and stuffed. I didn't have a voice. I never felt like I had a voice either growing up, um, and I think it's lucky for you that you had a lot of people who were in your corner, seeing you, supporting you, telling you to find your voice, kind of guiding you. And I always felt like I never had that. I just didn't, I never really felt like I had anyone that had my corner that I could actually discuss things with or talk things through. So I think for my experience and my own evolution was more about seeking other healers, seeking influential guides and teachers, and Wayne Dyers of the world, and just investing copious amounts of time in reading. And I mean, I've had lifetimes of experiences with healers, and really cool groups and experiences that I've had. And I think that's always often the big reason why people start looking for things, is because they're trying to heal themselves, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I know for me, I won't speak for you, but I wasn't aware of some of the emotional abuse that I underwent as a child or as a teenager or in my first marriage. I didn't understand what gaslighting was, and it's basically comes from a story back when a husband was slowly turning down these gas lights and dimming the lights, and the wife was like, "Oh, is it getting dimmer in here? Is it getting darker? I feel like it's getting dimmer." And he's like, "Oh no, you're crazy. Like it's not. It's not." But really, he was making her feel like she was going crazy. So kind of getting out of that and stepping out of the picture of my life in order to see the picture more clearly, I was like, "Oh wow, that was happening," and I didn't realize that. But I was being told these stories about myself, that I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't be a mom without any help, and that I wasn't ever going to be a good enough nurse, and all of these things that I started to believe. And it's really hard overcoming that. That's a lifelong journey of kind of healing from those emotional scars and those emotional wounds that we carry. They're heavy burdens.
Mm-hmm. So what set you on your path to a deeper discovery or more personal development? What was the turning point for you? Was it after your marriage, your first marriage? Was it during your first marriage?
I think in my first marriage, as you kind of said in my introduction, we were big. We liked going to conferences put on by Robert Kiyosaki, and so I've always been a firm believer in it's really good to have multiple income streams and things like that. We read Rich Dad Poor Dad. We read Cash Flow Quadrant. We went to all of those in my first marriage, and I love that bettering of myself in that realm, because my first husband was also into that kind of thing. And I was a full-time registered nurse with great credit, so we were able to get a bunch of revenue properties. So I think that's where it started. And then we started going to other events, similar events like Millionaire Mind, and it was at events like that where I learned, well, I can write my own book, and I can do this myself, and I can start my own business that has to do with things that I'm passionate about, not just real estate. So I think that's where it started. I didn't really go to anything as a youth because I didn't have the opportunity to, but I probably would have if I could have.
Right.
And yeah, it wasn't until I was kind of on my own that I got more into the personal development and trying to heal myself from narcissistic behavior or emotional abuse or whatever you want to call it. And I started reading all the books and all the things. Looking back, that's why I went into adult psychiatry as a nurse, because I was trying to find ways to cope with my own things that I had dealt with that happened even before any of my marriages and things like that in college, stuff like that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because I think, 'cause I was like, I think about Reiki. Like Reiki came to me when I was 15. I think I was 15, or someone, I don't even remember who, gifted me a book on Reiki. And it wasn't until I was in my probably I think it was late 20s, early 30s when I actually became a Reiki master. Um, but I just, when I look back, I look at the little seeds that were kind of dropped in, and it's just so interesting to see, what took years later when we can actually see with a clear eye and a clear mind of, oh, that was something that was kind of planted there. I don't even know who. Like, I don't know. Even my mother doesn't remember. She's like, I don't know where that book came from. And, and I still have it. I still have it here. And I teach Reiki now as well. But I would say Reiki chose me. And I've always said that. Reiki chose me. I didn't choose it. And even the other therapies that I do, I got introduced to them, but when as I was healing through, it was like the perfect combination of exactly what my soul and my body needed at the time. And I couldn't have orchestrated it any more perfect than that. And when I decided to go back to school to become a practitioner, it was like when I was there, it was like I already knew the theory. Sorry, I knew the technique. It felt very familiar to me. But it was the theory of why I was doing what I was doing. And so it just felt like it was a coming home. It was like an enlivening experience of I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it felt so natural, and it's always felt natural. But just following that guidance, and it's kind of been the same with personal development. It's like, oh, there's this course, okay, great, and then all of a sudden you meet all these amazing people who want to have amazing conversations, and so then I just got hooked, and I've just been a personal development uh, conference
Addict.
conference addict, definitely. I mean, I'm not so much anymore because I go now to events more for the networking.
Yeah, I hear
Or I was going for the knowledge. I was devouring the knowledge. I was devouring the information. I couldn't get enough and I wanted more, more, more. And I find it interesting even now, people are like, "Oh my God, Dix, you should go check this out." I'm like, "Oh, I've been there, met him like 10 years ago." And they're just like, "What? I just heard about this person." I'm like, I've been a personal development student since I was in my late teens, early 20s. So,
you.
I
Read
was
all the books.
read all the books,
And I
got all
love
the
that.
tickets.
I
Yeah.
love like there's all of this information, a plethora of information we weren't told as kids
Mhm.
out there. And it's on Google now. Like it's for free. It's on YouTube. It's
Mhm.
podcasting. Like it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for all of the knowledge and experience that other people have had to go through.
Mhm.
Created all this content. And I tell that to people all the time. Like, yeah, I could be your personal life coach, but I feel like all the information you need is within you. Like it's
Mhm.
all there. You just
Well,
need
that's
to.
the ultimate. That's the mastery, right? So that's the evolution of self-discovery. And as we age too, well, I think it's a combination as we gain knowledge, because we have to fill the knowledge. We have to gain an understanding. We need to understand the technology, the theory, the technique, and then it's about just being it.
Exactly. And you don't know what you don't know. So you're absolutely right. I
Hmm.
absolutely just love I learn something every day. You know what I mean? Like we are beings that are meant to be continuously learning and continuously improving. Are we meant to be perfect in this life? No.
Hmm.
But we're meant to try our best and be made we're made for more than this life, and we have so much potential within us that we don't even really realize.
Hmm.
And it's just trying to unlock that and embrace that and love that, because we all have different gifts coming to the table. I was meant to be a writer. You were meant to be an energy healer. Like
Hmm.
it's beautiful, the gifts that we have been given, that
Hmm.
we don't have to work too hard for. We just have to, you know, help
I think
other
it's being
people.
curious and being open to receive the information because I know like I had three near-death experiences in my 20s and I always find it interesting hearing other people's experiences because mine was very different. Like I was sitting in the waiting room and I knew that I was on death's door, but the door wasn't opening for me. And I was kind of pissed off at the time. And I would say I was definitely more in a negative space of just not understanding what was happening. Um, but I also didn't have any answers and I didn't have any further direction, but it was just like stuck. And I was just supposed to stay in this space. And it took a long time for me to unravel that too. But I did know, like I always felt I have a bigger purpose. I know that I have a bigger purpose. I just don't understand what it is. And I knew I wanted to be bigger, but I kept being put into these experiences where I was kept small. I was in a small container. And then I would ask, I really want to grow, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And they're like, no, that's not for you, Dixie. Right? So I was constantly hitting these walls with people that were trying to keep me in a container, just because they couldn't, and maybe they saw something they just didn't know what to express or what to share or direction to put me into. And this is to anybody who's listening. I think, if you feel like you're hitting that wall, don't give up. Like that's the biggest thing. Just don't give up and keep looking for your tribe. And I think that's the gift of today's day and age. We have so much information at our fingertips. And And I love, like, a lot of my clients are 50 plus, and they were like self-help, secret self-help people. And they just randomly happened upon books that gave them information. They didn't have the great Google where you could go in and type something in and get information back. Libraries. There were libraries and bookstores and like information was so much harder, even for our generation. Like I grew up with a library. You had to go and actually check out an encyclopedia and reference and check everything. I wasn't until I didn't even go back to school till university till I was in my 20s, and that's the first time I used a computer. So yeah, I mean, our generation, we're just babies. We're still figuring it out and we're still learning. But the information that we have at hand now on so many levels, I mean, it's mind blowing.
Oh, absolutely. Like if it's a blessing. If people are lucky that they have Google, because you're absolutely right. That wasn't around back then. And
Hmm.
as you were talking, I'm like, I know exactly what book I was reading, and I was with my first husband, and it was called Life Shift. And that book had a huge impact on shifting my life. Interesting,
Cool.
hey? I
Life
couldn't
shift.
think
Yeah.
of it at the time, but it's called Life Shift.
Yeah. Well,
Just beautiful.
it was all about the books, it's that, and sometimes we forget about those pivotal moments, those little awakening seeds that were kind of dripped in, um, for us to, for them to take hold, and then they flourish at a later time.
Yeah, this life is so beautiful, and that's just it. We're all on our own path and our own journey, and it's meant for us to walk and us to walk alone. I'm not meant to be exactly like Dixie, and Dixie's not meant to be exactly like Teddy, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Like
Hmm.
there's no need for comparison or self-doubt or anything like that, because we are all different and we're meant to be different, and we're meant to bless the world or bless people around us with our own light, because
Hmm.
we all have different shades or whatever you want to, whatever. I'm not good with analogies, but you know what I mean.
I totally get what you mean. Beautiful. So what would you say is well, where do you see your life going next? Like I know you said you're writing a book, but what do you see your overall legacy as? Like what are you hoping to build and leave behind for your children's children?
I think like right now I am on a medical leave. I'm in education. I hate saying this, but until or if I'm ever able to manage good enough, I don't see myself going back to that profession. It was too much standing up, sitting down, and my
Mhm.
body can't handle that. But I think the legacy I want to leave for my girls is they can do whatever they want. I'm very of the entrepreneurial mindset. I call it a hobby, but it's more of a passion. Like I'll always be involved in a few different things at the same time, and that's the way I want it. You don't have to like fit into one little box that somebody told me, oh, you're supposed to be a teacher and just be a teacher. Like you can kind of flourish and grow different branches, and that's okay too, because it fills different buckets within your own life, whether it's your intellectual bucket or your creative bucket. I think as long as you're being authentic, and I think that's my biggest takeaway I could say that I would want to leave my kids is, as long as the person that they're portraying and the person that they are wanting other people to see them as, or the image that other people see them as long as that matches the inside and what your true intentions are and
Mhm.
what's truly on your heart, then you're winning at life. So as long as they can find, whether it's a career path or maybe they choose art or whatever they do, maybe they're a stay-at-home mom, as long as they can find their own authenticity and love it and embrace it and be themselves while blessing the lives of others. You don't even have to try to bless the lives of others. It will just naturally happen, and people will just naturally be drawn to the energy that you emit or the light that you give off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. What would you say that you learned the most from motherhood, or what has motherhood taught you?
Motherhood is hard, especially raising a toddler as a single mom with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Without knowing I had those things, it was hard, but it's a selfless act of service, and your heart will grow so big. Man, I don't know what to say about motherhood. It's something that you can't really describe unless you have experienced it. You want nothing but the best for that little being. You can't even believe that you're driving home from the hospital and they're your responsibility. There is no manual for it. I mean, you get a manual that's 20 pages long on how to put your TV together or your TV up, and you get nothing for parenthood. Like, what is that all about? But it's beautiful. It's so beautiful, and I do feel like that's one of the main reasons that we are here, is to raise these little babies, and they're not truly ours. I don't believe that Taya belongs to me or Ella belongs to Michael or belongs to both of us. I feel like we were gifted with them to help raise them to be the people that they're meant to become. I feel like we give our children two things. One is roots and one is wings. So I'm just constantly trying to teach my girls to be independent and to get to know the real them. And it's okay that they're not the same. They're meant to be different, and find their own passions and their own dreams and just help them achieve them.
Hmm. Well, you nailed it, because that's the greatest gift that any of us can learn, I think, is roots to connect in and wings to fly and to soar. And to raise conscious human beings, to raise conscious and good human beings. I think that's the role of parents. I'm not a parent myself, but I just watch. I'm an outsider watching, looking in, and I always say that my clients are my babies.
Well, it's true. You're mothering your clients. Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
It's all about learning yourselves. Like my kids, we're a very special dynamic where we have them for a week and then we don't have them for a week. And I have no control
Right.
over what happens when they're not with me. And I think that's a good
Mhm.
analogy of life, is that we can't always control everything. Same with chronic illnesses. We can't always control what's happening to us or around us,
Mhm.
but we can control how we react to it.
Mhm. Well, and I think I would say the biggest thing that my clients have taught me, because no person ever walks in the door the same thing, or the same cut from the same cloth, cut from the same experience. Yes, there's similarities sometimes, but every session, every experience is so different with every single person I find. And I think over the years I've gotten more comfortable in finding the rhythm of just meeting people where they're at. I think that's always been one of my gifts. I've always been able to meet people where they are. Um, and I think now I just have more awareness of just meeting people where they are. And I think, and kids are so different. They're not the same. They're not supposed to be the same. And I always find it interesting when parents describe their kids as, yeah, they're always surprised that they're so different. So I'm always curious, like, what do parents think? Do parents think that their kids are supposed to be exactly the same, that they should be?
Funny because like I brag about my husband all the time. I name drop with all the bands he used to tour with and open up for and stuff, but he's nothing like his siblings. And I'm not saying anything negative about his siblings, but like my mom would be like, "Well, how did you find Michael? He's just so perfect at this and that and this and that. Why do you think that is?" And then I'm like, "Well, obviously it's nurture." But then I'm like, "Wait, but his siblings aren't like that." So it's just so true. Like siblings can be complete opposites. It's just unreal how we've all been born with our specific temperaments, and we're just all
Mm-hmm.
cells. It's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say, and I mean, I wasn't meant to be a parent in this, a traditional parent in this life experience. And again, I think my clients teach me that. Well, just humanity, humans teach me that. Um, and I love, everybody has different temperaments and everybody sees the world through different lens. And I can teach people how I see the world through my lens. And I find it interesting too, because even some of my clients tell me, they're like, what would Dixie say, or how would Dixie say it? And because Dixie looks at it through an optimistic lens. And they even say that to me. They're like, you're always so optimistic about everything. I'm like, well, I just have never, I mean, I can live in the negativity too, but I really try not to, and I choose not to be there for very long, but it doesn't mean that I still don't live in it and go there for long periods of time, short periods of time, whatever that is. But I do just naturally have a tendency of looking at the world, I'm looking at the cup as half full and sometimes half empty. There's no right or wrong to it. It's just whatever happens at the moment, but I've learned to let it go. It doesn't, I try not to define it too much.
Maybe I'm like that because my mom tended to see things half empty, and I don't think she meant to. I think everybody's doing the best that they can with what they
Yeah.
have, and she raised me as a single mom and had to work full time as well and didn't have much support and things like that. So I think everybody's doing the best they can, but I wonder if in my childhood I thought, I don't want to think like that. I'm going to switch things and I'm going to have a different mindset. Don't know, just thinking about it now.
Well, and I think it's a lot of it has to do with I think naturally I always looked for opportunity. Like I'm an opportunist. I always try to look for opportunities. And you know what, even just when I think back, I was just like, well, if this is the status quo, I don't want it. It doesn't feel good to me. And I
Right?
just never really went with the sheep. It was just like I just can't stand it. I just want to be out on my own. I want to stand on my own.
I feel like we have so much in common, and maybe that's why we're on the same energy length. Like
Yeah.
I was told you're going to be a teacher when you grow up, so I'm like, no, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to be different. And then like slowly, I trickled my way back into teaching. But still, I'm like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to like pave my own path. Thank you very much.
Well, it's funny that you say that because my dad said that to me. He's like, I would, I really want you to be a nurse so that you can take care of me when I get older, or be a veterinarian so you can take care of my animals because I grew up on a farm. And I'm just like, "Pfft, no, I'm not doing either one.
Or
No, thank you." And then, I mean, I kind of adopted a different lifestyle in the healing arts still, but I mean, I wouldn't change the path that I went on at any point. Like I look back through every hard experience and I see the gift that it is and how it's molded me and shifted me into the person that I am today.
I couldn't agree more. Like, yes, life has been hard, and I've gone through a lot of hard things, and people will always tell me that, but I'm kind of like, it doesn't feel hard though. Like, yes, of course you have bad days, but
Mhm.
I do feel like if I were to take any of that back, I can't regret anything that I've been through. I don't regret my first marriage because I got my beautiful daughter out of it. I don't regret suffering silently through all of these chronic illnesses because just now, and I'm 35, I'm getting answers,
Mhm.
and maybe there's no cure. Maybe it's always going to be hard to manage, and I'm going to have days where I'm stuck in my bed and working on my laptop in bed. Everybody knows my headboard and the back of my feature wall in my bedroom really well because it's been on a lot of Zoom calls. Let me tell you, I think Dixie's even seen it a couple of, but that's okay. Like everything I've been through has brought me to right here, right now, and I don't regret a thing. And I'm grateful for everything that's been brought my way, even the trials, as weird as that might sound.
Mhm. And what about stepmotherhood? What would you say that has taught you?
It's funny because you asked me how motherhood is, and I said it was hard. Stepmotherhood is harder.
Mm.
100% harder, especially when there's another mother that you're kind of not competing with, but that's still in the picture. So
Mhm.
it's very much there's that stigma of the wicked stepmom, and I can see why it's there. Like I know like my own daughter doesn't always have the most strong bond with her own stepmom because in the back of my own little tween daughter's mind she's like, you're not my mom, because
Mhm.
she's got some attitude in her.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's I think Ella sees me as a bonus mom, and that's all I could ask for, right? Like I'm never gonna try to replace her mom, but she knows when she's with me, she comes to me for the girly things, and Michael's always going to be the father figure, but I'm the one that helps out signing the agendas and helping when they have girly questions or they come home with their human sexuality homework that they need to talk to someone, and she's more comfortable talking to a girl than her dad.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like I feel like I got two for the price of one without having to put my body through the stress of another delivery, because I had a 50% chance of that killing me and I didn't realize it at the time. So it's beautiful the way life works out. Sometimes I joke that Ella's more like me than my own biological daughter. We have a lot of similarities, and Michael and I are like, you know what? Heavenly Father knew that. We joke, and it's not true because she loves her mom too, and
Yeah.
she's part of her life. But we say, no, she was meant to be our daughter. Heavenly Father just had to be creative about how she came to us.
Mhm.
So it's really special, and yeah, like we just have so much in common, and it's a little bit more of I think she sees me more as like an older sister. Like
Mhm.
it's hard to explain because I'll never be seen as a mother,
Mhm.
but I think she kind of looks to me, and I'm very influential in her life, and she does try to emulate me in a lot of things. And looking back, I had a stepmom growing up, and I did the same thing. I looked to emulate her, and so I like a lot of the same music that my stepmom likes. And it's just interesting how subconsciously these things happen and you don't even realize it's happening.
That's
But
so
it's a lot of fun. It's a fun, complex, weird dynamic at times, but we do really well.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that. I think, the family nucleus has changed so much over, I mean, what is traditional now anyway? I mean, everything, there's so many different people, personalities, expressions, color. I mean, there's really, I think everybody just, we live in a world right now where everybody gets to express their own uniqueness. And we don't need to try to cookie cutter our way through life anymore. So to me, there's so much liberation in that, and yet, and I think that's a big part of what we're trying to cut through. And I guess I was gonna say reclaim, but it's not reclaiming. It's just re-identifying, I think, how we're meant to be in the world, period.
Absolutely. And my kids are so used to this. Like they met each other when they were like 3 and 5. So this is all they've ever known. Like I remember being a kid from a divorced family and thinking I would never want to go back and forth. And here I am so many years later making my own kids do that. But they love it. They're used to it. They're so well adjusted. They love that they have 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases, and you know what I mean? So they kind of laugh that some of their friends don't know what it means to have a stepmom or a half sibling or anything like that, because my daughter has half siblings when she's with her dad. So it's just all this new lingo, and it's just different dynamics everywhere, and it is what it is.
Right. I think it teaches adaptability for everybody on every level.
Oh, it's made them so resilient, and they really do so well. Like we had a lot of issues with Ella when we first got together. We lived in my little tiny condo in Bridgeland, a 2-bedroom condo, and her and Taya had to share a room, and she's an introvert, and Taya, my daughter's very extroverted and very talkative, yappy little girl who wears her heart on her sleeve. And Ella's a lot like her dad. They're the artistic mindset, right brains. They kind of hold things in and like need time alone to decompress. And like this poor little girl is having to share a room with my daughter on bunk beds for the first couple of years of our marriage, and she struggled. Like we had issues with her with anxiety, but man, I feel like I can't regret that at all because they're so close now, and I'm so glad they have each other to fall upon, and they tell each other things that they don't even tell us, and I'm a-okay with that. Like as long as they have each other, they know where they're at because they're both in the same situation, right?
Powerful. Well, thank you so much. We're just at the end of our time here. And do you have anything else that you'd like to wrap up and just kind of finish off by sharing today?
I don't think so, Dixie. I just really appreciate the opportunity, and I look to you all the time, and I think you're such a great leader in your field, and I'm just excited to see what you come up with next, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors as well. I know we'll stay connected.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm looking forward to continue connecting with you and following you and seeing what you're up to and what you're putting out. And thank you so much for being with us today and just sharing your heart and just sharing a little bit more about what makes you so resilient. And as I mentioned before, you definitely are a woman of inspiration for me. And, I just and I hope it can be inspirational for others too. I hope that our watchers and listeners can take away some really beautiful content from today. I think we covered a lot of beautiful ground. And if you want to connect with Teddi, you can follow her on her Instagram account at Be a Little Bit Better. And I know you mentioned your Facebook group. Do you want to say that one again?
It's just Teddy Cutler. I have a public Facebook page people can like that's separate from my personal.
What was the group that you mentioned that there was a group about
Oh,
suffering in silence?
social support group for silent sufferers.
Right. So if you're suffering in chronic pain and you're looking for a group or you're looking for other women to connect with, I wish I had that support years ago when I was suffering in silence. And I think, that's the biggest thing is to find support and to find people who really get you. Because especially dealing with chronic pain, it's hard to find people in the outside world who can really identify with what you're going through, and a support community is the best thing, you know, to find people who hear you, who see you, who understand you. So thank you, Teddy, for creating that and having that support group. I think it's amazing. So I'll also post her links in the bottom of the show notes as well, so you can just click on her links from there. And thank you again. I just love our time together and love our conversations. They're always so in alignment, which I always love. And to our viewers, you know, please post, comment, like, and share. And of course, we appreciate you. And until next time, bring light, hope, and love to the world, and abundant love. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Thank you.